Hi, welcome to our presentation today. We're thrilled to have you. We are discussing behavioral engagement of students with different learning needs, and we are from Baylor University. And Tracey, Janet, and Jennifer are all faculty in the Department of Educational Psychology. Donna and Titus are graduate students, and Harsha is a university scholar and an undergraduate student at Baylor University. So to introduce the study, the study analyzed behavioral engagement profiles of fourth grade students who are identified as one of four types of learners. And these include students identified with a disability, students who are gifted and talented, students who are twice exceptional, and general education students. And in looking at the framework, we use Brofenbrenner's ecological systems theory as our framework to identify influences on student behavior that are important to educational outcomes.
Through our literature review, we have understood that student engagement is studied through three primary domains: cognitive, emotional, and behavioral engagement. As Dr. Robbins stated earlier, our research focuses on behavioral engagement. Behavioral engagement focuses on questions regarding student conduct, student participation in school activities, and student interest in academics. The first entails positive conduct as well as the absence of disruptive behavior, such as skipping school. The second point involves participation in school-related activities such as athletics or school governance. The third point concerns involvement in learning and academic tasks and includes behaviors such as effort, persistence, concentration, attention, and asking questions. Prior research has shown that high behavioral engagement had a positive effect on student achievement, and that low behavioral engagement has been linked to dropout rates. According to Bridgeland, 47% of students reasoned with dropping out, stating that the classes were not interesting. Papers have explained that teachers may have difficulty accurately perceiving levels of focus and attention in some students because of their personal learning needs. Teachers may also have difficulty with this task because students may deliberately mask their attention. Gifted students have reported pretending to be engaged or have admitted to being engaged in content other than what was being observed. This previous research leads us directly to our research questions.
Our research questions are as follows. Do student profiles of the four types of learners differ in terms of behavioral engagement? Do the students' profiles of the four types of learners answer the behavioral engagement items differently? And do twice exceptional students differ from the other types of learners on the construct of behavioral engagement? We chose to dive into these questions so that we can get a better understanding of the impact that behavioral engagement has on the different types of learners. So our study came from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study, where we chose participants from fourth grade, totaling 18,174. They are broken down by the four categories mentioned earlier: general education, identified with a disability, identified as gifted and talented, and twice exceptional. Students who were identified with a disability showed up on the ECLS as having a disability. Students who are identified as gifted and talented are served in either general GT, math GT, or reading GT. And students who are twice exceptional are students who are identified as having a disability, but also being served in any of the three categories of GT. And general ed students are neither having a disability or being served in GT. The weighted totals also allows extrapolation from the sample to a nationally represented sample. Weighted totals for each group are as below. It shows that general education is leading the charge at almost 3 million, and twice exceptional is the lowest at almost 30,000. The 5 items that we chose from the ECLS will help us understand behavioral engagement better. They're as followed. I work hard as I can in class. I try hard to do well in school. I participate in class discussions. I listen very carefully in class, and I pay attention in class. These were on a 5-point scale ranging from 1 to 5, with 1 being never and 5 being very often.
We'll discuss our results in terms of research questions. The first research question, do student profiles of the 4 types of learners differ in terms of behavioral engagement, was answered with descriptive statistics. Looking at the means and standard deviations on each item, the profiles are indistinguishable, except for one thing. The twice exceptional and gifted students had the least amount of variation in their responses, which is counter to what we would expect because these are our smallest groups. Research question 2, do student profiles of the 4 types of learners answer the behavioral engagement items differently, was answered through chi-square since these were nominal data. If you look at the Kramer's V on the far right, it shows that the effect size for types of learners on how they responded to each question is small, a little bit less than small, even though the chi-squares are significant. They're significant because of the large sample size, but we still only see a small effect. So that's why when we looked at the descriptives, we didn't see any differences jump out at us. Next question. Question 3, do twice exceptional students differ from other types of learners on the construct of behavioral engagement? To get to this, it was a multi-step sort of process. Behavioral engagement is found in the ECLSK is a single factor, so that allowed us to create summative scores for all students. We used that with the 4 types of learners as a grouping variable in ANOVA. And as you can see, the F statistic was significant. So there are differences when we take this as an overall holistic construct. We had 2 a priori tests that we ran after that. So we looked at general education students versus gifted plus twice exceptional students. And we found that there was a medium to large effect size difference between these 2, with gifted and twice exceptional students having higher levels of behavioral engagement. So the R is our effect size of a 0.44, 0.5 would be large. The last part of the question that we looked at was, do the gifted students differ from the twice exceptional? And as you can see there, the R is a 0.04, and to be a small effect size, it would have needed to be an R closer to a 0.1. So there is almost no difference between those 2 groups in their overall levels of behavior engagement.
So what do these data tell us? There is very limited research out there on the impact of students' learning needs on their behavioral engagement, how those needs may manifest in a classroom, and how they could be interpreted in observational ratings. The learning difficulty may be what is initially obvious to observers and include behaviors that are not typically connected to gifted students. More than a few teachers have been surprised to learn that a student who has been under the radar or even troublesome has been identified as gifted. Obviously, there was something there they did not see. So what looks like attention or inattention can be influenced by an unidentified or identified learning need or disability. Similarly, gifted students may have learned to hide learning challenges, at least for a while. For example, a gifted child who may hide or even be unaware of dyslexia until reading tasks become too complex for them to just memorize the material. Other gifted students who have completed work or are bored may want to look compliant and engaged and may show signs of engagement to please the teacher. And we know this from their own self-reports. The data presented here rely on student self-reporting of their engagement. That very small effect between the self-reporting of attention and commitment of gifted students and the attention and commitment of gifted students with learning disabilities indicates that outside observation may not be reliable at all. So what are the implications? Our finding is that observation is not necessarily reliable, especially if a teacher is not familiar with twice exceptional students and how they may present. Our recommendation is specific and targeted professional training, both pre-service and ongoing, in how to recognize twice exceptional learners. Teachers who become familiar with how learning needs manifest may learn to recognize twice exceptional students because their behavioral engagement is similar to that of gifted students, even though they may take longer to achieve the same academic outcomes, or they may take longer to accomplish comparable work. Similarly, unidentified or undiagnosed learning needs may be recognized in gifted learners if their work seems to get harder for them in ways that are not otherwise explained. Thank you for attending our presentation. Our selected references are on the final slide of this presentation.